What's up, everybody? This is your boy Clayton Cagle, aka Clay Cali, aka Clay Boy, aka Clay Doe. And we gotta talk about our friends in Bring Me the Horizon today, guys. We gotta do it. We gotta do it. They pulled a Paramore. I'll tell you what I mean by that later. Alright, so the official first week sales numbers are not out yet for this week, but Hits Daily Double did publish an article about the projected album sales of this week, and it's not looking good for the former MySpace deathcore titans, my friends. All right, I'm gonna make this fast because I gotta run back into work. I'm on break right now, but apparently Bring Me the Horizon's swift foray into the pop world is not translating into awesome sales, as it often doesn't. Now on Hits Daily Double, it appears that Bring Me the Horizon's new album, AMO, is only going to shift between 22 and 24,000 units total, 7,000 of which-ish are going to be album equivalent units, which would be streams or single track downloads, which would make about 14 to 17,000 would be traditional album sales. Now, those aren't necessarily bad numbers if you're like a Rise Records post-metalcore band, I guess, but for Bring Me the Horizon, it's not so good. That's the Spirit sold 62,000 copies in its first week to land at number 2 on the Billboard 200. 62,000 copies. And they landed on number 1 at basically every other chart, like the traditional album sales chart, the mainstream rock chart, and I think a couple others that I can't remember. But anyway, AMO is slated to hit, like, I think number 15 on the Billboard 200, and that is not a good decline, my friends. That's the Spirit sold 55,000 copies traditional album sales and just 7,000 copies in streams and track downloads. So basically AMO and That's the Spirit are on par. They match in album equivalent units, but AMO has only sold roughly a quarter of what That's the Spirit sold in traditional album sales. So why is that? We got to talk about this, guys. Now, originally I was going to analyze their entire discography and do like a full, more in-depth first week sales history for Bring Me the Horizon, and I'm probably still going to do that, but I wanted to jump on this right now because AMO just came out last Friday, and so these first week sales numbers are about to come up for real. And let me just tell you guys, I was totally shocked. I was totally shocked. I think AMO is a great record. I need to spin it a few more times to decide if I like it more than That's the Spirit, but I think it's a fabulous record. It's very well written. The songs are great. But upon further thought, I sort of understand why AMO isn't doing as well as That's the Spirit. And here are a few of my theories on why this album is sort of shaping up to be a flop. Sorry, my laptop just fell. Oh, I'm so excited to talk about this, you guys. All right, so first of all, AMO officially marks Bring Me the Horizon's departure from rock. I personally probably would have considered this a rock record had they not come out and said, this is a pop record. We are putting out a pop record. So that is immediately going to color expectations. Rock fans traditionally aren't as accepting of when their favorite bands do things differently. And I do feel like the marketing around this album was pretty good. I mean, I've heard about it, but again, I'm pretty easy to find. I'm in the rock and metal world. I'm in the music industry. I'm easy to find because I'm actively searching for these things. But that doesn't mean that the marketing was done well from a consumer standpoint. What I mean is, That's the Spirit, whether or not it did well on its own merits or whether it was marketed more heavily by Columbia, I doubt that That's the Spirit had more of a marketing budget than AMO does, because That's the Spirit was so successful. Typically, in a recording contract, if your album is successful, if your first album is successful, the next one gets more money allocated towards it. So it's entirely possible, or it's entirely likely that AMO did have a much larger marketing budget, but then why did it not do as well? Now, in calling themselves pop as a genre is way more competitive than rock music is. Way more competitive. I mean, you're fighting for background noise, essentially. I mean, pop is like top 40 stuff. It's the stuff that you hear when you go out and you go anywhere. And that's not like a slide against pop. I do like pop. I'm not just trying to be like a metal elitist, but it's just a completely different market. And Bring Me the Horizon being an established rock band, they're a big band in the rock world. They're nobody in the pop world. And I think the packaging for the album was perfect. I mean, Bring Me the Horizon are kings of packaging. If you've ever watched the Punk Rock MBA, Mr. Finn McKenty did a great video analyzing the success of Bring Me the Horizon and how they got to be as big as they are. And packaging is absolutely, they are the kings. They are the kings. From the image, to the artwork, to the songs, to the lyrics. These guys are great, and AMO is no exception. They totally knocked it out of the park. I think they did a great job. Again, the artwork, their image, down to their promo pictures, down to their interviews, everything was great. The biggest mistake they made was coming out and telling everybody this is a pop record, not a rock record. Now, if you look at Bring Me the Horizon's progression from album to album, it's all pretty streamlined. I mean, it all makes sense. Like, obviously if you listen to anything off of Count Your Blessings, like Pray for Plagues, and you stack it up next to like Medicine off of the new album, they sound like completely different bands. But if you compare Pray for Plagues to Chelsea Smile, it's not that big of a departure, you know? There's still elements that are there, and obviously they're just heading in a different direction, right? And the same goes from Suicide Season to, you know, There Is a Hell, yada, yada, yada. You know, obviously they're progressing, and they're doing different things, and they're slowly aiming towards the mainstream, but they did it so gradually. Not only did they keep their original fans, but they grew, because they graduated to more accessible sounds as they progress, or as you progress through the discography. Obviously the big one was Sempiternal. That was the album that really sort of blew them up. It's the album that got them signed to Columbia. It is, as far as I'm aware, in the United States, their best-selling album. I could be wrong, but That's the Spirit ended up being their most successful album. But like I said, I mean, their transition in their sounds from album to album is perfect. It's very smart. I mean, no one beats them at this game. Them slowly evolving their sound towards the mainstream has been seamless up until this point. Obviously, I think their peak was probably That's the Spirit, where Throne actually went to #1 on the mainstream rock charts in the United States, and I think Drown went to like 6. That album had a lot of great singles on it. It was their most successful album in their home of the UK as well. And they've never gotten smaller. I mean, no album in their career has sold less or been less successful than the last, with the exception of this one. But who knows, maybe that'll change, and maybe I'll be totally wrong. So like I said, I truly believe that telling the world that they're putting out a pop record, while it may have been good in the immediate term for publicity, I think it ultimately had a negative impact. The only publications that were running the story of Ollie Sykes says Bring Me the Horizon's putting out a pop record, the only publications that were putting out that story were publications that were already writing about them, i.e. rock and metal publications. This was like Metal Sucks and Blabbermouth. These are the people, alternative press, these are the people that ran with the title of Ollie says we're putting out a pop record. Because like I said, they're big players in the rock world, but they're nobody in the pop world. So them saying they're pop isn't gonna make the Rolling Stone readers like them. It's just gonna make alternative press readers not care as much. They're basically having to start over if they're gonna call themselves pop, because it's entirely possible they're losing their rock fans faster than they're gaining praise from the pop world. Which to me is totally fun that they said they're putting out a pop record, because the first 2 tracks that they released off of AMO were rock songs. You know, you have Mantra and Wonderful Life. Those are pretty catchy, non-threatening rock jams. I mean, I could totally see them doing well at rock radio. I don't think they did very well at rock radio, but to me, it was them trying to ease their fans into the rest of the album, which of course was more pop-oriented. So to me, it's foolish, because Mantra and Wonderful Life are not the strongest songs on that album. I think Medicine probably is the strongest song on that album, and that was their 3rd single. So the first 2 songs they put out, while they were rock, they were probably the most rock songs on their album. It wasn't a very good, they weren't very good singles. They didn't do as well at radio. People weren't as interested in them. The YouTube views aren't as good as their last record, obviously. And then they put out Medicine, and Medicine actually puts up some pretty good numbers. So I think if they had led with Medicine and never said anything about them turning into a pop band, I think that fans would have just accepted it without question. And these songs definitely aren't as strong as the songs on That's the Spirit. I think Medicine is, but Mantra and Wonderful Life, they're not as strong as like Throne or Drown or Doomed or Follow You even. And like I sort of touched on earlier, rock fans are much, much more likely to purchase albums more traditionally, as in physical copies or a full album download on iTunes or something like that. So by coming out and saying that they're pop, if they alienated any fans, which I think they of course did, and I think the sales reflect that, now rock fans typically don't stream as much as other genres, right? So rock fans are gonna stop buying their albums, which leads to the traditional album sales hit, and pop fans are gonna stream the way they always have. So that's why I think that the streaming numbers matched up between That's the Spirit and AMO. You know, pop is a radio game. It's about being heard as much and as often as possible. That's why you see guys like Drake putting out 25 song albums, because they're trying to maximize listening hours. 1,500 streams of a song equal 1 album sale in the eyes of the Billboard charts, and 10 individual track downloads equal 1 album sale on the Billboard charts. So instead of selling actual albums, you get people like Kanye West and Drake that just put out larger albums, or they put out a series of albums to sort of pad those sales numbers. So basically, by transitioning into the pop world, Bring Me the Horizon is agreeing to take less of their fan base with them as they move into a world that hasn't yet accepted them. I'm really curious to see what their next album sells like, and how this album shapes up in the next few weeks, to see if the streaming numbers go up or if they go down or what happens. And of course, you always have to factor in the decline in album sales industry-wide, worldwide, all of that, as well as rock music's declining popularity in the United States. But those two things don't have to correlate. Bring Me the Horizon selling a quarter of their new album, what they did to their last album, does not reflect the industry at large. In the last 3 years since they put out That's the Spirit, the industry has not declined to a quarter of what it was 3 years ago. That's just not the case. And originally I probably would have guessed that AMO would have sold more than That's the Spirit because of the success of That's the Spirit. But again, the singles and Mantra and Wonderful Life, they haven't done as well. They haven't done as well as Throne or Drown or those other songs. And them saying they're pop doesn't necessarily make the industry see them as pop. I mean, Mantra was still nominated for the Best Rock Performance Grammy. And just kind of as an aside, I would be willing to bet money that both Ollie and Jordan got vocal lessons, because their vocal performances on this album and on the live videos that I've seen of them recently are fantastic. I mean, Ollie's voice, it's always sounded strained. It always sounds like he's really struggling to hit certain notes and do certain things with his voice. Now it sounds effortless. I mean, he really has transitioned himself into a great singer, which of course would lend credence to them trying to become a pop act. Now they have to up their vocal chops. So anyway, my biggest points here as to why their sales might have decreased as large as they did is the singles weren't as strong. They basically started over becoming pop, and they took 3.5 years between albums, which in the rock world and the metal world isn't necessarily that abnormal, but in the pop world, 3.5 years is a long, long time. There's a very short attention span of pop fans. So anyway, I don't want to make it seem like I know what Bring Me the Horizon is doing. Maybe they have a grand master plan. Maybe they knew that this album wasn't going to sell as well. I don't know. And what I mean by they pulled a Paramore, like I said in the beginning of the video, is that with Paramore's self-titled album that they put out, I believe in 2013 or 2014, the album with Ain't It Fun and Still Into You on it, that album was a great hit. It hit #1 for the first time in Paramore's career with, I believe, 102,000 copies in its first week. Ain't It Fun, I believe, was on the top 5 of the Billboard Hot 100. Still Into You did very well as well. And then just 2.5, 3 years later, they put out Hard Times. Hard Times only hit #4 on the Billboard charts with sales of 54,000 in its first week. So you have half. They literally cut their album sales in half, coming out of the success of a great album and into an album where stylistically it's a lot different than their past work. So what I think you have between That's the Spirit and Paramore's self-titled album is that you have the apex of these bands' sounds, where the band is happy with the music they're creating and the fan base is also happy with the music they're creating. So they finally found their sound, their most refined sound that is both new and still has the foundation of what they've worked their entire career to craft. And then they come out of left field, and I don't necessarily mean left field like it's so different, but it is a pretty drastic change when you listen to Paramore's self-titled album to Hard Times, and then you listen to That's the Spirit and AMO. It's just a little different. You know, the songs are a little more, in both cases, the songs are a little more like throwbacky, Beatles-tinged pop rock versus, you know, Paramore's pop punk excellence on their self-titled album, and Bring Me the Horizon's like mainstream rock, but they still have some screams and some breakdowns. I mean, it was like, those were the two albums by those two bands that everybody could agree on. And then they put out something that is creatively much different than what they'd done in the past. And unfortunately, fans just don't like change. I mean, when someone's favorite band releases an album, fans expect a certain thing. You know, you're gonna expect a certain thing, and when you don't get it, people don't like change. You know, so unfortunately, a lot of fans don't come along for the ride. If they're not open-minded and if they don't understand what that artist was trying to go for, or if they have a special connection to this album or whatever, it's not going to resonate with them in the way that their older material does. And unfortunately, it leads to a lot of situations like this where bands lose sales and they lose fans, and it sucks. It really, really sucks. Because again, I love AMO. I think it's a great record. Again, I don't know if I like it more than That's the Spirit or Sempiternal. I probably don't like it more than Sempiternal. That's probably my favorite album. But who knows? I mean, Bring Me the Horizon's on a US tour right now, and they're playing some arenas. I haven't seen any ticket sale information for that yet, but God bless them. I hope they're doing well. I hope those shows are selling out, and I don't think they are. I don't think they are, but if they are, great, you know? So it remains to be seen whether or not these sales will have an impact on their career in the long term. But I do know that right now it's incredibly strange to see such a large decrease from That's the Spirit to AMO. Anyway, guys, let me know what you think below. Again, do you like the album? Do you hate the new album? Do you like it more than That's the Spirit? Do you like it more than Sempiternal? Do you think this is going to impact their career? Do you think this is a sign that people aren't really caring about Bring Me the Horizon? Did they peak? Are they on the decline now? I don't know. I guess we'll see. Thanks for watching. What's up, guys? It is Saturday, February 2nd, so the first week sales numbers are officially out. I'm sitting here with my mini wheats and I'm watching some Dr. Phil. And Bring Me the Horizon probably not having a great day. AMO has an official first week sales tally of 27,000, and they hit number 14 on the Billboard charts. So going from number 2 at 62,000 with That's the Spirit, now they're at number 14 with AMO with just 27,000. That's the same number that they sold in the UK, which is their home. Same number, United States. And think of how much bigger our population is than theirs. Not good numbers, guys. So yeah, it's a 35,000 unit decrease from That's the Spirit. What do you think happened, guys? What are your thoughts? Let me know.